Welcome back to the second episode of Elevate, the Focus Group podcast. Today we have our internal cybersecurity awareness manager, Kim Roberts, and I'll let Kim do her own introduction. And a brief overview of what we're going to be talking about is everything cybersecurity awareness, what that means, who it's for, how you should be thinking about it, and some key takeaways for people listening to this episode. So we'll get stuck in and we'll let Kim do her introduction. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Really nice to be here. So, Kim Roberts, I've worked at Focus for 6.5 years now. Been in the cyber part since CSA became part of Focus Group. Amazing. And very excitingly, I've just taken on the role of being the manager of that department.
Perfect, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So we're going to go into a bit of what it is.
Yeah.
For people that haven't heard a bit of the history, how it came into Focus Group, and then into some of the customer kind of aspects of things. So I suppose in the beginning, for people that have never heard of cybersecurity awareness, what would you say it is in one sentence?
Yeah, so I would say cybersecurity awareness is part of Focus Group that is dedicated to improving the cybersecurity of a business above technology.
Okay. And what do you mean by the above technology piece? What does that allude to?
So obviously technology is a major part of cybersecurity. It is really important that businesses have a very secure IT environment, so having your firewalls, your antivirus, etc. But I think there's a bit of a misconception for a lot of organisations that that's enough. So cybersecurity awareness is kind of dedicated to the other parts that businesses need to be focusing on. So talking about your employees, your policies, your process, your risk assessments, and cybersecurity awareness is basically a bunch of services that kind of tick all the boxes in all those areas.
Okay. So it's the collection of those things, not just the kind of technology itself. It's all the processes, policies, all the things that kind of come into it and around the people that are in the organisation as well.
100%. Because a majority of cyber attacks are not down to a failure of technology. Technology does an amazing job of reducing the noise by about 99%. However, a lot of cyber attacks, I think it's above 60%, are due to human error.
Okay.
And if you take M&S Co-op as an example, massive organisations would have been investing hundreds of thousands of pounds into that IT security. Sure. However, it was a human error that resulted in one of the biggest cyber attacks that we've seen in the retail space. Okay. So it kind of goes, it doesn't really matter what business you're part of, doesn't matter how big of an organisation you are. It really is that as long as your employees and your processes and policies are in place, you're actually at a real higher level of security compared to just having some antivirus.
Sure. Okay, makes sense. And in terms of if we open that up into things, then what does that service portfolio look like when it comes to cybersecurity awareness? We've kind of touched on policy, we've touched on kind of the human element, but is there the portfolio of services, do they kind of bracket into certain things? And
yeah, so probably our main service that we sit there and talk about the most organisations is our security awareness training and testing. Okay. So it's all about ensuring that employees understand what a key part they play in their IT security. Okay. It's more common now that a lot of organisations have to have training in place for compliance reasons, whether that's for insurance or certain frameworks that they're working towards. Yeah. But I don't want organisations to think it's just a tick in the box. Yeah. Because employees really do play such a key part of that IT security. So our security awareness training and testing is, say, making them understand what a key part they are in that, giving them all the resources possible to ensure that they know what the newest threats are, what it is they need to be looking out for. And then the testing, which we do through phishing simulation, is about making sure that training is actually being applied. Obviously, no one likes doing training, and I really do appreciate that. And I'm slightly weird. I find cybersecurity really interesting, but again, I realise not everyone does. And the service is about, with the first part of this service is a baseline test, where basically we send out a fake phishing email to all employees, chosen by the senior leadership team within that organisation. And we just see, before training, how many employees would potentially click on something dangerous. Okay. And by doing that, it kind of opens up people's eyes to how easy it is to fall victim to something. Yeah. I think when people think of phishing, you automatically go, oh, the spelling's going to be incorrect, there's going to be some grammatical mistakes. But AI has already been involved. These emails are looking more and more sophisticated every single day.
Yeah.
And so I say this service is about making sure people know what to be looking out for, how to be applying it on a daily basis. And it goes without saying it's going to be taken into their own lives as well as their work life.
And that baseline then just lets the people, the kind of senior leadership, whoever in the company, know what level everyone's at across the business. If they get a really low score, it's like, okay, the awareness is really low in this in the business, and we've got risk that our members of staff might cause an attack into the business by clicking on something they shouldn't do, and that kind of gives them the starting point.
Yeah, let's say it's at the end of the day, I think a lot of organisations think that their employees are probably better than what they actually are. And it's not saying that people are not using common sense, because to say these attacks are becoming a lot more sophisticated.
Sure.
The baseline really is being done just to raise that awareness.
Okay.
It's making people go, oh, actually, I didn't notice that there were mistakes in the domain, and I didn't hover over that link to see where it's going. And more than anything, just asking the simple question, does this make sense?
Yeah.
Really is a massive eye-opener. And it's just getting people to take that step back and going, okay, before I engage with this, let's just look at this as a bigger picture. Let me ask an opinion. Let me ask a colleague. Let me look at the general policies of the company and see what it is that I should be doing just to create that safer environment.
So it's cybersecurity awareness training, you said, was the first part, and that's that baseline training and the modules around it, is it?
Yes, and then we have the testing element of it, which is just continuous phishing simulation, just to ensure the fact that people are actually applying that training. Sure. If as part of the service, if they don't, then it just means the fact that they're enrolled into additional training. So we're just making sure that those who need that little bit extra support are given to it straight away. Okay,
and people that kind of pass with flying colours, they kind of come up on an analytics thing to show that they're doing all right?
Yeah, we give a risk assessment to every employee, depending on their engagement with the training and also how many times they have passed or failed their monthly testing. So it gives from, I say, like an senior leadership point of view, it gives a really good overview of, okay, how are employees doing? Are there certain groups of employees that maybe need a bit more attention? So with that sales, accountancy, whatever it may be. It gives that really broad overview. But the benefit of our service is the fact that it's fully managed. So the customer will have a dedicated CSA agent who basically builds that service for them. Nice. They will be looking at the reviews as well, making sure the fact that if there's any area of concerns that they are seeing, they're communicating that with the customer, giving them the best advice as well to ensure that they're reducing that risk as quickly as possible.
Perfect. Okay. We'll come back to some of these bits, I'm sure, as we unwrap into the customer stuff. How did CSA, or Cybersecurity Awareness, become a part of Focus Group?
So it was 2020, so obviously quite an eventful year for the whole world, but Focus acquired Cybersecurity Awareness to basically develop a cyber division within Focus.
Okay, yeah.
So beforehand, Focus had telephony, internet, mobiles, energy, IT, but you'll see this with loads of organisations that offer IT support. They normally have a separate cyber division, just simply because of how many things, although overlap, are completely different. It's quite common for people to use the phrase, I don't want to mark my own homework. And so therefore just having a third party division, meaning the fact that we can look at the work that our IT side is doing, as well as other IT organisations, and just making sure the fact that they are at the level that they need to be.
Okay, so it's a strategic play by them to bring someone in that could strengthen what they do portfolio-wise anyway to their customers.
100%.
And in terms of 2020, lots happened in the last 6 years.
Yeah.
What's evolved in that kind of space within cybersecurity awareness, the portfolio, the things that's been happening within your team? How has that all kind of evolved since it's come a part of Focus Group?
So we've just massively evolved in terms of what we've been able to sit there and offer customers. We're at a really privileged position when it comes to CSA. The fact that the guys who build the service are also the ones who are talking to our customers. So it means the fact that we get to hear the real struggles that organisations are dealing with, the pain points that they have on a daily basis, and also just, as I say, their general concerns. And that is what we use to either add to the existing services that we have in place or bring into the portfolio with a different solution. So as I mentioned, security awareness training testing is obviously a major part of this, but we also have policy acknowledgement, which is about making sure organisations have all the policies that they need to make employees aware of what to be looking out for, but not just in terms of security, but also GDPR, health and safety, everything that businesses need. And then we also do risk assessments, so vulnerability scanning, penetration testing, just to see where those potential holes are that could be remediated quickly and reduce that risk of an incident occurring. The overall threat landscape of cybersecurity has massively changed in the last 10 years, and especially in the last 5, you've seen a massive ramp up. I always use the example that if you go back 30 plus years ago, the biggest risk was someone breaking in. And so therefore, every organisation made sure they locked their doors, they made sure that they put alarm lines in, CCTV footage everywhere. The newest threat is someone potentially halfway across the world trying to attack you over the internet. But it's not just one person, it's multiple people.
Yeah.
So just like you put all those locks in, doesn't mean that you ever, like someone ever did try to break in, but you put it in place to ensure no one could. And that's why cybersecurity awareness is so important, because it's about, it may not have happened yet, but it could happen. So let's make sure the fact that you're as protected as possible to ensure it doesn't get to that stage.
And you see it individually with people on their personal phones, personal computers. There's always text messages coming from, click this, reset your password here. So people probably indirectly are aware these things are happening, but maybe ignore some of it. And when they go into work, they they forget about it anyway.
And I think it's I think it's more the fact that people assume that technology does more than what it can do.
Yeah.
Now, technology is great, and it probably reduces the noise by about 99%. However, a lot of services in terms of the IT space are only able to sit there and protect an organisation from what is known. And cyber is unfortunately ever evolving. I've already mentioned, but like AI is a massive tool to criminals. It's great for us, but it's also great for them. And it means that these attacks are becoming a lot more sophisticated. It's becoming harder to detect, and so because of that, technology can't always keep up. And that's why I say ensuring that your employees know what to be looking out for, making sure that there are clear policies, doing a risk assessments of the environment to make sure that those holes are patched. It's really the only way to give yourself that confidence that you are as completely as secure as you possibly can be.
And that continuation through the service is like any training you get. Typically, if you've gone and watched a training course or whatever, within 2 weeks you've forgotten about it here. So that continuation, just make sure that it's constant awareness.
100%. And that's the main reason that we do monthly phishing simulation, is because it's like any habit. It takes a while to sit there and actually build in. And I mean, fire safety as an example, right? We have to do fire safety training every single year. You could probably ask me a question on it half an hour later and I would have no idea. It really depends on whether that person is interested in it. And the reason that we do the baseline, the reason we make sure that people are talking about policies, and it really is a key part of communication towards the whole organisation, is because it needs to be front of mind. And say it's not just protecting them from a work perspective, it is also protecting them in their personal lives as well. You don't want anyone to fall victim to any sort of personal fraud or scams that you see all across the world. And say it really does help in both areas.
Okay, good. And if we go into the kind of customer space a little bit more, when they come to speak to you or they speak to the team, they want to start working with you, what are the actual problems that they're coming to you with? What are they kind of talking to you about? And what does that landscape look when are they aware of something when they first initially talk to you? Or are they coming with a problem, or are you guys just diagnosing a problem when you talk to them? What does that look like?
Honestly, it's normally 50-50. Okay. We have half people that we know that there's an issue. We know the fact this is something that potentially could affect us, and so we want to be ahead of the curve and put something in place. Normally when I get involved with these conversations, it's we know we need to do something, not sure what, please can you help us? And
they're just worried about something.
Maybe. And I think that's the same with a lot of organisations. It's a lot of fear mongering out there. There's a lot of negative news. You'll say you heard about M&S, you hear about Co-op, Land Rover. Like I say, loads of different types of attacks that are constant there, but you're not really in the same news article getting information of exactly what it is that you should do to prevent that from actually happening. So that's normally where our conversations come in. It's kind of just giving that peace of mind that they are okay and it's going to be absolutely fine. We're just going to get this all put in very, very quickly. The other half of it are people that initially are just doing it for a tick in the box. It's, say, insurance, it's frameworks, they work with certain organisations who require them to have a certain level, and our service ticks all the boxes for them. But I always say that although our services will tick a box for you, it's not the reason that they were developed. They were developed for the very simple reason that human error is normally the biggest risk of a cyber attack, and also not being aware of what all those vulnerabilities are is really detrimental to an organisation. And as I say, that's where we come in, just to basically give them as much knowledge as possible in all areas, because knowledge is key, right?
Yeah.
So making sure the fact that they're aware, we give them the remediation, we give them the advice, and they feel trusted, that they know that cybersecurity is just going to get to the level where they can prevent those attacks from occurring.
And is there, I was thinking when you were saying like Co-op and Marks and Spencer's and Jaguar, they're all kind of the big brand names that we all hear of, and that they're all big companies. Is there like a threshold for businesses to do this sort of stuff? Should they, if you were like a smaller business, should you still be worried about this sort of stuff? Is there kind of penalties for those kind of businesses as well as the larger ones? And
no, of course, like bigger organisations are the one that you hear about in the news because of the amount of money that it sits there and takes. Yeah. But the National Cybersecurity Centre, they give out a report every single year. Sure. And it was last year that they said about 60% of SME businesses that have a cyber attack usually close within 6 months. Oh, wow. So it's not, when you hear about big organisations having it, although horrible and it's a very stressful environment for those businesses, financially they probably are going to be able to recover.
Yeah.
When it comes to smaller organisations, criminals are going to have that assumption that they don't have things in place. And so therefore they're kind of seen as like an easy target.
Less process, less policy.
Exactly. Yeah. And criminals are going to take advantage of that. So we work with organisations of all sizes. Like we've got some organisations who have 3 users. We've got some organisations that are over 1,000. Mm-hmm. It really is a conversation that every business needs to have. It doesn't matter what sector. It doesn't matter of your size. Because unfortunately, criminals don't really care. If they think it's an easy win, they're going to sit there and try it.
Okay, that makes sense. And we were talking about AI. I mentioned CSA a minute ago, cybersecurity awareness. There's lots of acronyms. There's lots of technology out there, and there's say these articles that come out. People aren't necessarily sure where to start. How can they start cutting through the noise to kind of I'm interested in this, I've been listening to this, or maybe they were aware of it anyway. What is a normal starting point for them, and how can they break through all the kind of chaos that's out there with it?
Yeah, so I would say for any organisation, you kind of want to focus in 2 areas. Now, although I've said technology is not the only thing that you need to have, but you still need to have it. So make sure the fact that whether you're using a company like Focus and just calling them just for some advice in terms of the kind of IT setup, I recommend making sure the fact that you have a secure email security solution. So we use obviously Office 365, having inbuilt security from there. Multi-factor authentication is something that I desperately plead every organisation have, because it's surprisingly easy to get access to in somebody's inbox, so having that second layer. But more than anything, it really is your employees. If your employees know what to be looking out for, if they know the kind of attacks that potentially they could be seeing, if they know what the process is in terms of, okay, this phishing email's in front of me, I now need to report it to this people. I think sometimes things make their way through to them and they go, oh, I don't know what to do here. Maybe it's legit. Let me just click it and find out. Yeah. Rather than go, oh, actually, I've heard about this before. Let me ask my colleague. Let me report this to our IT. Let me report it directly through to Office 365, G Suite, whatever they are using. Yeah. That will probably be my starting point. And normally when I have these conversations with organisations, it really is about kind of giving them that peace of mind initially that they are going to be okay. And it's just a few little tweaks that need to be put, which can make an astronomical difference. And employees is a really big part of that.
Okay. So if we go, cybersecurity awareness is our business around awareness. It's that training aspect. It's getting the businesses that we talk to as customers into that space where they can set a baseline. They can kind of look to see what their staff are like within the business. Are they clicking on things they shouldn't be in a safe way through the training? That gives them their baseline to know, do they need to do more training for certain individuals? We've got different things we can do around kind of policy documentation in general. So if they're looking at GDPR, they're looking at other policies they might want to deliver within the business. As you mentioned, the fire training, that can all be done within there. Then you've got things around the vScan and that side of things. Then we've got in around the sort of the technology buzz that we're just talking about. It's essentially creating that safe space where they can talk to someone, come to the team, get a bit of an understanding. They've heard something might be happening there, where they might need this. Maybe it's a tick box. Maybe they've just heard something on the newspapers, and they just come to you. They get that initial kind of open conversation, a bit of discovery, like what you're trying to do. how many, doesn't matter what size business you are by the sound of it, 3 users up to however many thousand you've got. But it just gives them that baseline to start looking into the security. Question around the vScan and the other elements. How do they fit into that portfolio then? What's the difference between that training element and the vScan element and those bits if we bring those as separate pieces?
I would say, so we have solutions called CyberSight, vScan and vPen, and I refer to them as risk assessments because it's basically just providing them the information of those potential gaps.
Sure.
So CyberSight is a service which basically does 24/7 dark web monitoring of a company domain. So anytime it becomes available for sale on the dark web, that organisation will get a notification detailing the email addresses that have been affected. And then in the portal, there'll be additional information such as passwords and personal identifiable information. So it's not removing any information from the dark web, but by making that company aware of it, it gives them prime opportunity to change passwords, implement two-factor authentication, basically ensuring that all that information that is being sold is just completely void and isn't going to affect the organisation. vScan and vPen are two solutions which basically test the external IPs for any basic hosts. So the way that I describe these two services is, imagine an organisation as a house. These services will basically go, cool, I can break into your house by climbing onto your roof and going down the chimney, jumping over your back gate and going through a window. Actually, there's a key underneath the flower pot. I'll just use that and open the front door. So vScan basically highlights all those things for you. It'll obviously give remediation advice, like put your key in a better place or something. Whereas vPen just goes a step further. So vPen is a virtual penetration test. Rather than just highlighting it, it will then give the security impact of that vulnerability. So going, so I could take that key, I could open the front door, and then I could steal everything inside that house.
Sure.
So just giving that additional information means the fact that when it comes to the IT part of the business, leadership, whoever may be looking at these results, it gives them a better idea of actually where their priorities may need to be. Now, all vulnerabilities are given basically a rating between low and critical. However, you as an organisation, it might only be a medium risk, but the security impact of it to yourself results that to actually become a critical thing. So that's why vPen is actually recommended alongside vScan, because they say it helps derive a better remediation plan for that organisation. Now, we recommend consistent testing. So vScan is done on a monthly basis, and then vPen is done on a quarterly basis. So having them both together means that you're constantly being made aware of any potential holes that are there. But at the same time, you've got that peace of mind, you've got all the reporting, you've got all that remediation, and you also have a team within Focus who can sit there and help you out with any questions that you have.
So you've got then, portfolio-wise, the cybersecurity training is that kind of baseline thing we were just talking about. Then to take that almost on a step further, the CyberSight is basically, we've got the focus group domain, emails in there. That would be monitoring the dark web. If anyone's email or any passwords associated with anything in the focus group domain came up, it would allow us to see that, and then we can proactively change those things, protect ourselves a bit further. Like say, maybe look at two-factor authentication if we didn't have it. And then you've got the vScan, which is basically then just scanning all of the kind of tools and external pieces, websites, whatever that might be for focus group in general, and just seeing is there any kind of penetration points that someone could get into and do an attack, and it will go, okay, it's here, it's here, it's here, it's here. This is the kind of critical level of what I can see here. But then the penetration goes a step further and goes, well, actually, I'm going to now take that information and go and do it and tell you how far I can actually get. And then from there you can, so a business that maybe hasn't started or done anything yet, would their starting point be the training first, to see the cybersecurity awareness training, or would they typically start with a vScan? What would you recommend?
I think it really depends on how the business is running as well. So if you've got an organisation, let's take, I don't know, family-owned construction business, probably 2 IT users, but holding a lot of sensitive information, holding information of all the people that they've worked with. I would probably start off by recommending a vulnerability scan of their environment, just to ensure that there was no easy way into that information. But obviously making sure that we do offer training to those who are IT based. If I do have an organisation that are very IT user heavy, then training is the first thing that I would recommend, because when it comes to vulnerability scanning, when it comes to penetration testing, obviously this is highlighting where the issues are and what it is they need to be put in place. So normally it's a bit of a project that can arise from it. With the security awareness, I could have a call with them. They could say that they would like to go ahead, and we can get the training out to them within a month. So it's quite a quick turnaround, and it does have the biggest effect on an organisation. I say you can have all the technology in the world. If something makes its way through, it is up to your employee to ensure it doesn't go any further. So, roundabout answer, I'd probably say the employees is probably where I would initially start, and then we would look at that bigger project in terms of their IT infrastructure and where we can sit there and view the vulnerabilities there.
And have we got any, like, I suppose it's different for each business, like you're saying, depending on what they do, but those outcomes, like let's just say it's a business owner listening to this and they're going, okay, I probably need to look into this. What's the kind of like a clear thing for them to be able to sort of take away from this, where you go, for you as a business outcome, those kind of things you're thinking of your business, you know, there's probably 1,000 things they need to get done in their business. What's the kind of key takeaway for them on this, where you go like, almost like if you don't do this, what's that kind? It's getting that into their mind in a way. It's kind of understanding that.
It's unfortunately, we're no longer at a state of if it happens to us. There are criminals every single day trying to sit there and attack organisations. There's loads of email security solutions out there. Focus predominantly use Mimecast. You can go onto Mimecast results and see how many phishing emails are being reported to them on a daily basis. It's in the millions. So at some point, every organisation is unfortunately going to fall victim to it. And
it'll probably accelerate with AI, I would imagine.
1,000%, because to say these emails are only getting more convincing. So like, whereas before with phishing, as say, the red flags normally were like, oh, it's not very good English. It's broken. It's very obviously not come internally. Well, now you've got AI. I mean, I use AI to sit there and do spelling mistakes and correct my spelling and grammar. Criminals are doing the exact same thing. So it's all about making sure that, like, if you are a business owner or you're working within the organisation, to sit there and go, okay, am I 100% confident the fact that if something made its way through, that my employees wouldn't click on anything? And there's also no harm in admitting that there may be a bit of an issue. I say I've been working in this part of Focus for over 5 years now. 6 years? Yeah, 6 years now. And what I've seen is a bit of a shift of, whereas beforehand people were quite defensive, being like, no, our IT is good, our employees are really, really good.
Don't question our business.
Exactly that. And it's not about being defensive. It's about making sure the fact that you're honest enough to go, actually, this might be an area that could cause devastation. Let's be proactive in it. Because cyber attacks aren't just financial based. Yes, it's a major part of it. But also you have operational downtime. Are you as a business actually able to run if this cyber attack occurs? Are there legal consequences? Do you have to report things to the ICO? Are you going to have to sit there and display this to your customers? And so therefore there's a bit of a risk of like reputational
damage.
And also like for your employees as well, like you don't want your employees to be in that anxious environment. I say I don't personally know anybody that worked in M&S during that time. But if I was an employee and it was my department that was unable to run because they were unable to do online sales, you're concerned about your job. And that's not a nice environment for anybody. And no employee wants that, and no employer wants that for their employees. So it really is not just about, I think it's sometimes you need to put pride to the side and go, actually, let's just make sure we're at the level that we need to be. Because
a little kind of motto, pride to the side.
Just marketing, get me out here. It's to say, it's about making sure that businesses are open enough to be like, okay, we can always improve. Let's see how we can improve. And that's really how cybersecurity awareness has been designed, is to kind of help with those areas.
You made a good point when it's like not just the financial cost of maybe like if it's a ransom kind of type attack where they're demanding money, but if you're operationally down for a week, can your business afford to do that and be out of that? And like you say, the people in the business, can they afford to maybe potentially lose their job? And all the other. So there is a compounding effect of these things that, like say, not just financial. There's lots of areas that it can actually affect the business.
Because it really, really does snowball. And I say that's why it's estimated about 60% of organisations like SMEs end up having to close within 6 months. And I think it's because people don't know the aftermaths of it. I think we say cyber attack and people just think money. Like that's probably what we're hearing about. I mean, that's what we normally hear in the news. And I say it's so much more than that. Say the legal consequences as well, like the ICO take data protection really, really seriously, as they should. And a lot of cyber attacks are very data driven.
Sure.
Yes, of course, ransomware still occurs, but a lot of time when I'm speaking to businesses, especially SME, it's the fact that they've targeted where that information is being held, because they know that the fact that that information is really valuable to that organisation. And again, probably will pay to make sure it doesn't go out. But it's just going to sit there and completely, it just damages the environment within the organisation, because it results in a lot of lack of trust between customer and business, but also within the employees as well, being like, oh, am I doing everything right, doubting themselves, and without that clear guidance on what it is they should be doing, it's not going to result in a positive work environment.
I thought about, as you were saying, some of that emails that I've had over the last couple of years where I don't remember it getting to the news, but certain companies where I've had like a username and a password, you'd get an email and be like, we may have had a potential breach. It's probably makes sense for you to, or we recommend that you change your password and stuff like that. You think, oh God, that makes me feel a bit uneasy. Like, so you can imagine as these attacks are going to get more sophisticated, like you say, depending on the depth of that data that you hold with it. So imagine if it was a doctor or a dentist that's got your address, everything on there, and that information's been captured. Those customers that then on that business side is going to have a really uneasy feel, like you say, that reputational damage, all those other things. So it does. There's a cascading effect when you start to kind of think into those areas as well.
100%. And they say like it's so interesting like how connected everything is. So I say I've mentioned employees a lot here, but obviously technology is a part of that, because we want to make sure the fact that the chances of these emails making its way through, or whatever the type of attack is, I'm using phishing as like an easy example, but you want to make sure you've got your email security in place to reduce that amount of noise. So the fact that it's less likely that an email is going to make its way through. It's not 100%, but it's less likely. On top of that, you want to make sure that you've got your processes and policies in place. So the fact that if something does come through, your employees then know what it is that they're supposed to do with it. Making sure that's consistently updated. And then doing risk assessments alongside with it, just to make sure the fact that that is as completely as secure as possible. Because it's all well and good having firewalls and having email security and having antivirus and all of these things, but if you've left a port open, which means the fact that someone can just make its way through and maybe conduct a man-in-the-middle attack, it doesn't really matter, because you have this vulnerability and it wasn't pointed out. And I say, so all of the services that make up CSA really do work well together in terms of boosting that security, and say above technology.
Because that's a good point, because even if all of the staff are actually really hot on the kind of email clicks, but someone in IT accidentally left the port open on a firewall or something like that, the attack still gets through anyway into the actual network or infrastructure. Okay, so just kind of recapping on some of those bits then. So the portfolio for cybersecurity awareness, you've got the cybersecurity training baseline set within the business. That's the kind of employee stage where it's like, let's understand how vulnerable the staff are to clicking on these things. Can we set baseline? Can we get the training going? You've then got infrastructure awareness or tools rather, which is around the cyber site. It's kind of checking that dark web monitoring. Has anyone kind of taken any of our information and tried to sell it? We can then lock down the security around that, 2FA, those other bits. The vScan and the vPen are more around scanning the infrastructure in the environment and seeing if they can penetrate into that, and then allowing you as an organisation to block those gaps, so you're really kind of squeaky tight. If you're starting as a business, you're mentioning the employees are the biggest kind of factor, because they are the ones susceptible to most attacks, and especially if you're an SME business, if you have one of those attacks, there's a 60% chance, or you're in that 60% chance of getting out of business because of the impact that it has on the overall business. pretty serious stuff when it starts to compound and you bring all those things together.
I say it becomes really, really scary really, really quickly.
Yeah.
Which
a very important conversation, quite a scary one.
100%. And this is what all of the people within ZSA try to do, is kind of just give that peace of mind to businesses, because I say it can snowball and very, very quickly, but I think even in terms of our panic, it can snowball really, really quickly. So I just want to reiterate, there are loads of organisations out there who probably don't have the level that they need to be at this moment in time. It's not because they've done anything wrong, it's not because they are bad business owners or anything like that. It's just the fact that this threat has emerged at an exponential rate than a lot of businesses realise. You also have to take into factor that life is expensive, business is expensive, so a lot of organisations are thinking, this is all great, but where do we get the money from to sit there and form it? And this really comes down to, say, a board level conversation, because it's not something that can now be ignored. It's something that they need to be taken seriously, and they need to be bringing part of that conversation, because I say it really needs to be put into people's budgets, because it will make the biggest difference, unfortunately.
It feels like it's as important to this part of the topic, which is probably overlooked in a lot of businesses, as it is that the products and services they sell to their customers. Because if someone gets into their network, it could be game over for their business, or at least shut it down for a long period of time, which obviously no one wants if they're working in a business or running that business. Which, when you kind of think about it like that, it's like, oh wow, okay, this should be almost top priority 100%. Outside of how do we make money, how do we serve our customers. If anyone's been listening to this on their commute, say, they're hopefully, if you are listening to it, please listen all the way to the end. Hope you've got to this point, well done. What's a key takeaway? If they're getting out the car, they've kind of listened to this, gone, okay, this is more serious than I thought, or this is more important than I realised. What's a key takeaway that you want to, maybe 1 point, 2 point, 3 points that you think they should be taking away from this conversation as top of mind?
I would say initially is invest in your employees here. You've hired them, you like them, you know that they're going to do a good job. Make sure you're giving them all the resources they possibly need. Training is a major part of that, but also making sure that they are being consistently monitored around those areas. Not like Big Brother, but in terms of making
cameras everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. Just making sure the fact that it's not just a training once a year, the fact that you are checking in with them, whether that's through phishing simulation, whether it's just a chat in the office every so often, just to make sure people are aware what to be looking out for. I think that's a really key point. Obviously, have technology. Please make sure that you do have your antiviruses, firewalls, etc. But don't just rely on them. It will only take you so far. I'd probably say those would probably be the two major points there. Okay,
perfect. Makes a lot of sense. It's certainly educated me more than I thought that I definitely knew about the area and topic. And it's you can see actually when you start getting into it how much that kind of level of importance creeps up, doesn't it, when you start compounding all these areas together. So really appreciate you taking your time out your day, and then you've got a lot on and a lot of customers to talk to, so thank you very much. Thank you guys for coming back into the second episode. There's going to be more of this stuff coming ahead. We're going to be talking about different business outcomes around how you as business owners can get the most out of what you're doing as a business, more around AI, more around cybersecurity. We're going to be talking about some sales aspects as well, everything that's really going to kind of educate and help you guys drive the success that you need in the business. And everyone that's listening, thanks very much, and hope to speak to you soon, or hear you, watch us soon. You get the point. Cheers.
Bye.